Hey, it's Mark Ferguson with Investor More, and I'm standing outside a property that I own right now that we're currently working on. And I'm going to go over some of the costs it takes to fix up this property for us, also what it might cost someone else who's not a professional house flipper, and some of the different options you have. Plus, we're going to talk about some of the other more common repairs. So what's unique about this property, as you can see, it has one house, another house, and another house. And we have two houses here that have not really been worked on at all. And then we have this third one that's pretty much done. So we can show you what kind of work we do, what it usually looks like after we're done, all in one property, which is kind of cool. And it is Fun Car Friday. I had the Diablo out earlier, but it does not come into this lot very well because we're on a very busy corner right here and some very large bumps to drive over. And the Mustang has good clearance. All right, we love the likes, love the comments, love the shares. Keep those coming. And then let's talk about some of the repairs on this property. So first off, if you can see, we have done the roofs already. We've done some of the exterior paint on that one. And that's usually one of the most expensive repairs we do is the roof. And something to consider too is if you live in Colorado like we do, and you have a new roof on a house or you buy a house that has a decent roof, you're probably not going to ever have to get a new roof at your cost because hailstorms come through, it will destroy your roof. The insurance company will pay for most or all of your roof. So if you have a good roof to start with, you're probably not going to have a massive expense for that. But if you're buying houses that have bad roof, rehabbing houses that might need a roof, that's when that expense can come about. And so there's a hole over there above that roof. For this roof, we're in the $20,000 range for all these properties, maybe a tiny bit more. But if it was just this house, we'd probably be from $7,000 to $10,000 in that range for shingles, taking off the old shingles. Now, if you have to come in and redo the sheathing, which is kind of the wood plywood underneath the shingles, that can be more expensive. And a lot of this also depends on what lumber prices are when you do your repairs, because they're all over the place right now. I did a video like this a few years ago, and prices have gotten so much higher since I did that video, and that's why I'm doing this new video. And a lot of that's lumber, labor, all kinds of materials are just so much more expensive than they were before. So what we could repair for, $30,000-$35,000 before is probably $50,000 to $60,000 now. All right. The outside, actually, hold on. Paint on the outside is something to think about. And something else to think about too is it will vary so much on who you use to do this work, even where you are in the country. When I do these videos or post these numbers on my Instagram or TikTok or whatever, people are just like, oh, you can't do that here. That's impossible. Maybe that was 10 years ago. And we could pay way, way, way more than we do if we just found the first person we could find. If we find those people who go door to door and try and sell windows and siding, we could pay 10 times more than we pay. But we work very, very hard to find good, affordable people. So for painting the outside of this one little house here, I'm just talking about this one house, not all three together, it would probably be $3,000 to $4,000 for us. Now, if you've got to replace wood trim like this, if you've got any rot, if you're replacing soffit, that can add to it, obviously. Maybe you're paying another $500 for that. Nothing too crazy, hopefully. But we could also find a painter right now in this area who would charge us $10,000 to paint this house easily. But we work very hard to find good, affordable people. We've been doing it for many years. And yes, you can find those people yourself too by shopping around, asking around. Hey, maybe you know a real estate investor who has some contacts who might be able to help you out. And you can see they painted part of this house. That was not us who painted it, and did not paint the other side. They painted the side that faced the street that people could see and left the other side unpainted. So that's always interesting when they do that. All right, something else to think about. And I'll try and go over everything, but I'm sure I'll miss some stuff. So if you want to comment below on something I miss and ask me, happy to try and answer that. Gutters, right? This house doesn't have gutters. Most houses should have gutters. Most owner-occupant loans require them. Sometimes you can still get away without having them because the appraiser won't call it out. Sometimes they will call it out, but you're probably looking at $1,000 to $1,500 to put gutters on this house, somewhere in that range. And like I said, you could put them on all the other houses too, but we're just talking about this house for right now, which is about 1,000 square feet, I believe. Maybe it's 1,200. in that range, just to give people an idea of what that would take. All right, now let's go inside and look at some of the other stuff, other prices we'd have in here. All right, so this one, when we bought it, had stuff in it, had carpet, but we tore all that out. So we have done most of the demo, tore out the kitchen, tore out the bathroom. It will need a lot of work. So I do have a video that goes over how much a kitchen costs. Again, that's a couple years old. It still is pretty accurate. Maybe costs have gone up a little bit more, but we use Home Depot for almost all our supplies. We have a managed pro account there. So we get really good deals. We get lots of cash back. We get lots of incentives to do that. And they tend to be cheaper after all those discounts than other places. So we would probably pay $3,000 for cabinets here. We probably would put in laminate countertops, we'll show you, which would probably cost us, $300 or $400 in material plus labor. We'll probably put in, the basic appliances, which would probably cost us about $2,000, excluding the fridge. Well, we might put a fridge in this because it'll probably be a rental. So maybe we're looking at $2,500 to $3,000 for appliances. And that's, the simple stuff, not the crazy expensive stuff. And then we'd have ourselves a kitchen plus labor. So you're probably looking at $6,000 to $10,000 for a kitchen, depending on how far you go, how fancy you get. Now, if you get into granite countertops, you're probably adding, a few $1,000s for that. If you get into custom cabinets, all of a sudden you're spending $8,000 to $10,000 on just cabinets alone. You can easily get into the $20,000, $30,000 range for a kitchen. If you go crazy, really make it super nice. In my experience, it's just not worth it to do that unless it's a very high-end house, especially in a property like this, which would be pretty much a rental property. So we don't have to go that crazy. Something else that while we're here we can look at is flooring. Actually, no, before we do flooring, I don't want to forget. See that black stuff on the wall? That's mold. So this can be also another thing where people really get tripped up on, really spend a whole ton of money repairing houses on. Yes, that's mold. Yes, mold is bad. But it's not always as bad as people think. There's different types of mold. Some is worse than others. Different people react to different types of mold differently. You can come in here and have a professional mold remediator do this, minor repairs, and they might charge you $5,000 to remove stuff, not even put it back. Or you can find a better, cheaper mold expert to do it, and he might charge you $500. There's a huge range, and you'll find a lot of people who specialize in mold, meth, drug remediation, water remediation, like emergency services like that. You can find people who charge an amazingly high amount, but you can also find some people who charge a reasonable amount. Our contractors are well versed in mold. One of them used to work at ServPro, so he can come in here, cut out the bad stuff, check everything else out, and it'll be a few $100s for us. It's not that bad. Now, if it was everywhere, if he gets into it, also it's on the inside of the walls, then it might get more expensive. You can get a moisture meter to kind of test the walls and see if they're still wet. All kinds of things you can do, but just remember, you don't have to pay insanely high amounts just because it has the word mold attached to it or emergency water services. We'll talk about that here in a second too, because that can just really get crazy. So if this house were to flood, it has a basement. We've had basements and rentals flood before. We know lots of people who've had it flood before too. And you call like a ServPro or a water restoration company, something like that. They'll come out that day, they'll bring their pumps, they'll get all the water cleaned out. If it's sewer, they'll clean up the big mess, and you'll literally get a bill for $10,000 or more for an afternoon's worth of work. And the reason they do that is because they assume your insurance will pay for it. They can kind of charge it an insane amount and the insurance will be okay with it. But just realize if you don't have insurance, if your insurance doesn't have like a sewer backup rider, you might be stuck with that huge bill. So those companies can be great. They can be very fast. They can be very thorough, very effective, but they also be very, very expensive. So if that happens to us, we'll send our contractors, have our guys go out, rent pumps, material, machines from Home Depot, dehumidifiers, fans, all that. Save us thousands and thousands of dollars. Then we probably don't have to do an insurance claim if we don't want to, because you do too many insurance claims and insurance companies stop insuring you, and that's a bad thing. But again, that's kind of a professional company like us versus a homeowner who, if you have a backup and you've got insurance, it's probably smart to call the professionals and get them over there as quickly as you can. Just kind of make sure your insurance covers all that, because that can be a pretty massive repair bill. All right, now flooring. You can see the flooring is a mismatch of stuff all over this house. And here's the bathroom that's been taken out mostly. The toilet does go right there. They took it out and put it in the shower. It doesn't go in the shower. You have hardwood, you have plywood, you have 2x4s, all kinds of weird stuff. This is all covered up by carpet before. Now, if we wanted to refinish this hardwood, let's assume this whole house has hardwood floors all throughout. They're pretty beat up, but it's got them everywhere. They're in decent enough shape to refinish. What do we say we have? Maybe 1,000 square feet is what I'm thinking this house is, maybe a little bit bigger. You're probably gonna pay, $3,000 to $4,000 to refinish those hardwood floors. Might be able to get away with a little less if they're in decent shape, and if they need lots of work, you might be paying more than that. But a pretty good amount just to refinish them. That assumes they're all here. You're not making huge major repairs, and they're not completely destroyed. Now, if you're laying carpet down, again, we use some of the affordable stuff from Home Depot. We can get it pretty cheap. We have a real nice cheap installer. You know, we can probably do this whole house for $3,000 in that range. Depending on the grade of carpet you use, you could use much more expensive. You could pay $10,000, but it's really not worth it for us to do that. Carpet is not really the in thing right now, but it can be the most affordable, because if we're doing, even the LVT, the laminate flooring, the click and lock flooring, that's costing us about $3 a square foot now for the decent stuff. So after we install it, if we did this whole house in the LVT, it's probably $4,000 to $5,000 to do that. If we start upgrading to engineered hardwood floors, buying new hardwood floors, you're probably getting up there close to, $8,000, $10,000 to do hardwood in this whole house from scratch. So that can add up to, we can usually do a mix of LVT and carpet depending on the house. If it's a rental, flip, how nice it is. We're in Colorado, so people tend to like carpet in the bedroom still. It's soft, it's warm. But hard surfaces in the living room, kitchen, dining room, that's where we tend to go with that. If you're in Florida, maybe you need tile everywhere, right? It's just different down there. If you're in the Northeast, the West Coast, it can be different what type of flooring you use. And it's important to know your market, know what people expect and want in that particular area. All right, for paint in this house, this beautiful, lovely property. Again, we have really affordable painters who we've worked very, very hard to find and give them as much work as we possibly can to keep them happy. We can probably paint the interior of this property for $2,500, maybe $3,000. And that includes taping off everything, taking all the outlets off, walls and trim. You can see there's no trim in here right now, which we should talk about the cost of that as well. But they would be painting the trim. Oh, there's some trim over there. Found some. And so that includes paint and labor. Again, we could easily pay $6,000 or $8,000 if we just went into the Yellow Pages or the internet and Facebook, just search for the first painters we could find. And those guys kind of hope people don't really know how much painting costs. And a lot of people don't, and there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, it's not your job to know exactly what materials and repairs should cost if you're not in the business. But a lot of remodelers, a lot of people depend on you not knowing, so they can charge really high rates, and they just focus on homeowners and not investors because of that. And like I said, not saying there's anything horribly wrong with that, but as a homeowner, someone who isn't a professional, and you want to repair your house, just know there are ways to do it more affordably. This is a nice little rotten roof area addition thing. Hopefully you don't have one of these on your house, because this is a mess. I don't even know if we want this or if we're going to tear it out. Who knows? So we're talking about paint, flooring, doors, right? Doors can be very expensive. It doesn't seem like they can be that expensive, but that will add up too. As you can see, this house has some doors, some are just gone, some are here, some are okay, some are beat up. They're all different. So, we could paint all the doors if they're in decent shape and similar. Really wouldn't cost us that much, maybe a few $100s extra in paint and in labor to paint all the doors if we want to do that. They'll take them all off, they'll spray them. It's pretty simple and easy. If we want to replace these with all new doors, you have the option of just getting the slab, and then you're cutting all the trim pieces or the hinges in, probably cutting down the slab a little bit. It takes more labor, so a lot of times it's much easier for us to just get the whole door that comes with the frame and everything. And doors now are probably what, 100 to 150, maybe more than that now for each door and materials. And then you're looking at labor, so you're probably looking at, really, to be safe, 200 to 300 per door you put in. If all of a sudden you're putting in 10 doors, that's, a few $1,000s right there in doors. And that assumes you're using like the hollow core, pretty cheap ones that you can find. If you start getting fancy solid core, tall doors, you're paying way more than that. Windows are something that can be expensive as well too. And again, you can pay a whole lot of money for windows and siding. They're kind of those companies that specialize in windows and siding, and they specialize in those because they're very good at selling them to people, and they can be very, very expensive. We almost never side our houses unless it's just completely destroyed, and then we just go to Home Depot, get their basic siding, costs us, I don't know, $3,000 to $5,000 in material, plus you're painting it. You don't need to pay $30,000, $40,000 for siding like some of these companies will want you to do. The same for windows. Like we could replace that window. It's a bigger window. It's probably what, 3.5 feet tall by 4 feet wide. Probably $200 to $300 window material. Probably replace that window for $400 in that price range, maybe a little more. That's a Home Depot basic gelled window or equivalent. And these companies will tell you, you have to get the expensive windows. You have to get triple low E. And they've done studies, the government has, about the efficiency of windows. And just these double pane vinyl windows, basic window like this is, there's nothing fancy about it. Massive improvement over the single pane aluminum window. Huge energy savings, huge improvement. The triple E, low E, triple pane, whatever window versus this basic vinyl window, very, very small improvement. Very small. There's like a 70, 80% efficiency rating from this to single pane, and like 8 to 10% or something, or less than that, usually from triple pane to this. So we do not tend to get the expensive windows because they're just not worth it. And not to mention that, but windows, they don't last that long anymore. Even the really nice ones we've seen, Anderson windows fail, some of the other really nice windows, their seals fail after 10, 15 years. And you look at some of the reviews on those windows too, and they're not very good. These windows can also fail after 10 years, sometimes even sooner. The seal will break. You'll see it start to fog up. And you can actually get just the glass replaced for cheaper than replacing the whole window when that happens. But even if you're replacing these windows 4 times for every new triple E window you get, you're still ahead just doing that, because these will literally be 1/5 the cost of the expensive low E windows. You don't need to spend $30,000, $40,000 on windows. If you get a patio door, that's going to be more expensive, probably, $800, $1,000 for materials and installation. They can be kind of a pain to install. But again, you could also pay $3,000 if you get the really expensive ones. And for the smaller windows, if we're doing, 2 foot by 3 foot regular windows, we can usually get away with $300 a window for labor and materials. That might be creeping up now because windows are getting more expensive. And it's not even the cost that's annoying. I mean, that's obviously annoying too, but they're all backed up. So it's 2022. We're still dealing with supply chain issues, and we really have to order windows and different supplies way ahead of time, like months ahead of time, to make sure we get them in time. So that's, a lot of times that's one of the first things we do when we get a house is we order windows, order certain supplies that we know is going to take a while to get. Well, there's lots of different things to think about. With trim, right? This house has no trim. We probably want some trim. I remember it used to be $1 a square foot for trim. Not anymore. So with installation, materials, boy, you're probably paying $2, maybe a little bit more a square foot in trim. And that's, not, this room is 18 by 18 or so, has some weird cuts. That's 36 72 feet for just this one room of trim. So you got $140 here, $150 here, probably, $800, $1,000 in trim to trim out this whole house if you want to do that. Possibly more depending on what kind of trim you use. If you get the fancy thick trim, if you get the cheap thin trim, all that can vary. But all these things add up when repairing a house, and that's why it can be so expensive. All right, moving on to the bathroom. And someone used that bathroom, and it was not like that before, so I'm not sure what's going on here, but that does not make me very happy. I'll try not to show it to you. I'll zoom down a little bit there. So you can see it had some tile on it. We tore that out. It's still got the shower. Sorry. We're gonna try and leave that because showers can be very expensive. Vanities, we can pay $200 to $500 for a small vanity. We'll get special deals at Home Depot where they're on clearance. Tile floor, if you want to tile the floor, it can be way more expensive than just doing the LVT laminate or even vinyl. So we tend not to do tile unless we need to. If depending on the house, a toilet, $150 to $300, depending on how fancy you want your toilet to be. Then you've got the other things to consider, like the mirrors, the lights, if you're doing a shower door or not, whatever you're doing there. The showers can vary greatly. That's why we didn't take this one out. It's got a window in there. Usually we just do a shower surround. And for that size shower, I don't know, $800 to $1,000 for the surround plus labor to install it. You're probably like $1,500 to install a new shower. Plus you've got your faucet and shower pan, all of the surround should come with it. But you're probably a couple $1,000s to replace that shower if you use a surround. If you're doing all that tile, you're probably adding another $1,000 to that cost because of all the material, the time, the labor it takes to all that tile. So if we can save that shower and reuse it, most likely, yeah, for sure, we're gonna save a couple $1,000s there over doing that. Tub, about the same cost for a bathtub. But again, if you're doing tile, way more expensive. And it's ironic because a lot of people think, oh, tile looks so much better. It's so much nicer than a smooth surround. But some of the surrounds now look way better. They have some character to them. But a lot of people in my comments don't like tile because it's harder to clean. Your grout gets dirty, gets moldy. They prefer the surrounds. It's so much easier to clean. They don't get as moldy. And over time can actually look just as nice as the tile background. All right, so we've been talking lots of cosmetics, basics, different things. To finish that off, kind of light fixtures or something we almost always do, makes a huge difference. We can buy pallets of these at Home Depot. We don't get the boob lights like this one. We get the flatter ones now. And the flat boob lights, I guess, is what we get. But anyway, we'll usually pay $20 to $30 a light by buying them in bulk. You're probably paying $40, $50 now to get the decent ones. If you're getting ceiling fans, you're paying $100 to $200 for a ceiling fan. We tend not to put ceiling fans in the houses unless there's no AC. Most of our houses do have AC, so again, lots of different options there. But you can pay easily $1,000 to $2,000 when you add up all the different light fixtures you're adding in the house. It can be a pretty penny. And with the kitchen too, I forgot, sink, faucet, sink can be $100 to $200. A faucet, same thing. Don't forget to add that into your cost as well. If you're doing a backsplash, that can add to your cost too. That's why we like those laminate counters because they have their own backsplash and not quite as expensive as doing everything else. All right, now the major stuff and costs that can come into things, we've already talked about a lot of costs. Plumbing, electrical, HVAC. So plumbing, right, this we can see it has some gnarly looking plumbing here. And I don't know if that's galvanized pipes. It kind of looks like it is. Galvanized is the old metal, pipes, and they tend to rot and rust and drop particles into your water. So it's usually not good to have galvanized pipes. Copper is much better. Copper is fantastic if you have copper pipes. If you have PEX, that can be okay if you use it the right way. We just realized we had some PEX on have a big strip mall with overhead rooftop air conditioning units, and they use PEX outside for some of the draining. And my plumber's like, PEX is good for 30 days outside before it starts leaking. So don't use PEX outside. It should be inside. And sometimes you see stuff that looks like PEX, I forget what they call it. You see it in mobile homes a lot, and that stuff fails all the time. So plumbing can be very expensive. It just depends on how much you need to do, how far you have to go, how much you have to replace. If you're repiping an entire house with copper, you know, sometimes it's not just the cost of the copper and labor to install it. You might have to be removing flooring or drywall and repairing all of that as well, which can get very, very pricey too. So in our houses, if we have to repipe a whole house, it's probably going to be $5,000 to $10,000 of costs once you consider all the damage that's done and what all has to be done. If we're just replacing, you know, leaks, fixing leaks, other things, our plumber usually charges about $100 an hour, somewhere in that range. He might give us a little better deal, but labor's expensive now. I'll tell you what, HVAC, electricians, plumbing, any of those you know, licensed professionals are very expensive, can get very pricey. So plumbing can be something that really adds to the cost of a house. It's good to get checked out, make sure your pipes are decent, are good. Electrical, same thing, right? Newer electrical is so nice. If you've got old wiring, old knob and tube wiring, you probably need your whole house rewired. If you've got old outlets that aren't grounded, so what that means is basically, you know, the third little hole, I don't know why it's upside down, sometimes you see that, is the ground plug. So if they just have two holes, usually means your system's not grounded, can be more of a fire safety issue. Talk to an electrician about that. Replacing outlets themselves isn't usually too expensive, depends on what kind you get. The outlet covers are like $1, that one's broken, but the outlets themselves inside, you know, I don't even know what those are, $5 to $10 now, I haven't looked for a long time, but if you're replacing, you know, 50 of them in a house, that definitely adds up to quite a bit. Rewiring, again, can be very expensive because you might be, you know, hopefully you can go in through the attic and run wires down. If you can't, now you're cutting into drywall, making repairs there again. Again, rewiring a whole house can be in that $5,000 to $10,000 range, depending on how far you have to go. If you're doing a panel, if it's old knob and tube, if you're replacing all of it, if you're just replacing some of it, if you're just replacing outlets, and you know, maybe a panel, doing minor repairs, maybe you can get away with a couple $1,000s of electric work. But you know, plumbing, electric can really add a ton of money to those costs. All right, if we're talking HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, that's all more expensive too. And again, if you're just replacing a furnace, $3,000 to $4,000 we can usually get away with, depending on what work needs done. If it's just replacing a furnace and nothing else, I feel like it might be need a little bit more than that. AC, probably the same range, $4,000, maybe $5,000, depending on what's needed, how big it is, how big the house is. But you can always add to those costs too if you need new vents, right? If the house didn't have heat before or no heating system, you're running all new vents, you're tearing stuff up, there's another $2,000 to $3,000 there. Wiring, if you're adding an AC and didn't have an AC before, you're not just doing the AC condenser unit, you're running the plumbing and the wiring and hooking it up to the furnace, which adds another $1,000 or more for that as well. So HVAC, if you're replacing whole systems, can be, you know, $8,000 to $15,000 depending on the system, what you're doing. Water heaters, you know, used to be $700 to $800 for full replacement. Of course, that's more expensive now. Now I think we're paying $1,000 to $1,200, which is still really good. You might pay more than that for water heaters. Again, bigger ones cost more. They tend to last about 8 to 10 years, sometimes more, sometimes less. Your furnace ACs, they should last 20 years, maybe 30 if you really push them. I feel like the newer things get, the less long they last. Like they make stuff to break now, I feel like. So you replace it more often. But if you take care of them, maintain them, that makes them last a lot longer too. Make sure you change your furnace filters, have your furnace, your AC serviced every couple years at least, if not every year. That will greatly prolong the life of those units. If you never change your furnace filter, never have them serviced, we've seen 5-year-old furnaces die because of that. So make sure you're doing that. All right. As you can see, it can be very expensive repairing a house. And if you decide to take on a gut job because, we usually do most of the work anyway. Well, the gut job's not that much more. Then you're thinking about, whoa, that's a gnarly bug, sorry. Sheetrock, right? Another 5 to 10,000. As soon as you tear that out, if you do all kinds of other stuff, all kinds of craziness is going on. What is that guy? A cicada? A locust? Maybe someone can tell us. My son would love him. Anyway, sorry. Then you start changing floor plans around, changing walls around. And if you have supporting walls, you're, a few thousand here to put in a beam. To get an engineer out here, it might cost you $500 to $1,000 to do a report. Really can add up if you start changing floor plans, changing walls. Lumber is very expensive, like I said. So if you really get into that realm, we could say, we're gonna move a bedroom to the back. We're gonna take this wall out. We're gonna open up this whole area. Maybe we can do that. Maybe we can't, depending on the roof supports. That might add another $10,000 to the remodel once you're considering the demo, moving the electric, possibly moving heating vents, putting in supporting walls, fixing sheetrock, drywall. It can really add a lot, and that's why you don't see us do that very often. It can really, really increase the budget. All right, so I think we've covered most of the costs. I'm sure I forgot some. But let's take a look at the other house, because I know you've been staring at these walls for a long time. All right. Foundations, that's something else. These are smaller houses. I did a foundation house a couple years ago. Many of you will remember. I have tons of videos of all our flips and rentals on YouTube, obviously. That was a $125,000 foundation job because they had to put in like 37 piers or something. It was just crazy. So you can have minor foundation work that needs a few $100s just to patch holes, or you can have massively expensive foundation work. If you've got foundation problems, I would always suggest getting an expert out there to look at it. And again, you'll have massive price differences from different experts, so it does not hurt to get multiple bids. And this one we can see is mostly done. Paint's in, floor's in, lights are in. Oh, I lied. We used boob lights in here. I think it's because we had a contractor we haven't used for a long time. He kind of got too expensive and too slow. And he came to us, said he really needed a job. And he actually gave us a really good bid on this one. But I think that's why he probably used those lights. We don't really use those anymore. But you see, basic Home Depot cabinets, basic countertops, basic sink. But it doesn't look bad. They actually look really nice. We'll get the appliances in here. Normally, like I said, on our flips, we won't put a fridge in, but on our rentals we do, because tenants do expect a fridge. Buyers usually expect to have to bring their own fridge. Like I said, paint, I think those outlets are new. Outlet covers are new. Some of the trim, I believe, is new, but not all of it. And then, yeah, painted everything. So, pretty simple, basic rehab. But again, this is a rental property. We don't have to spend a whole lot of money on this one. That's a new window right there. That's what is that, applied gem? Oh yeah, I don't know if I've heard of that one. Okay. If it's a flip, we might do a little fancier, a little higher grade floor. Probably do a real similar kitchen though. And maybe we'd do different doors, maybe not, just depends. But we don't have to get too crazy on this property. And you don't have to get too crazy on your house either, because a lot of times we see houses sell on the market, they're not updated at all, and they sell just fine, maybe a little bit less money. And then we see flips that sell, they're completely updated, right? And they sell for a lot of money. But then sometimes we see homeowner houses that are slightly updated, but not like super updated, and they'll sell for almost as much as the completely updated flips. It's kind of weird. So don't think you have to go crazy, all out HGTV remodel to get a good return on your money. You can do just the basic stuff and still sell your house for quite a bit. New tub here. I think we do have to do tile here. I forget why. Weird size, something like that. Had a shower in here before. It was very strange, so it's nice we could get a tub. But here you go. Here's what it looks like. This rehab probably cost us, just for this little area, this is a much smaller house, only like 700 square feet, something like that. Kitchen, I'm trying to do all this math in my head, probably $6,000 for the kitchen, $2,500 for the floor, we'll just call it 10, the paint another couple thousand, 12, The bathroom, probably another 14, 15,000. All the fixtures, 16,000. Then miscellaneous stuff throughout, fixtures, outlets, different things. Probably have 20,000 into this rehab right here. And I think we painted the outside as well. Or we're going to paint, I think it's painted. That probably right around 20,000 to do this. But again, small house, pretty basic stuff. We're not doing any crazy HVAC. We aren't doing any crazy plumbing, any crazy electrical. Those can really, really add up to all that. Oh, and then we didn't count the roof. If we count the roof, we're probably around 25,000 in rehab for this little house right here. This was a small roof, small house, and we did 3 at once, so we get a little better deal doing it that way as well. So there you go. That's what this little one probably costs to rehab. All right, so I know this has been a very long video, and I've still got to go back and edit it. I'm going to try and add all those costs so you can see them too, and we'll add them up at the end and go over what it might take to completely rehab. All right, so we're back in the office. I kind of want to recap all the repairs we went over and kind of give a running total, because I know there's a lot I just talked about and went over, and I'm sure there's a lot I missed too. All right, so just looking at the repairs for this particular house, bathroom, you could spend $1,500 to $7,000. We'll probably be on the low end there. We're not redoing the tile. I'm not doing a lot of crazy plumbing there. The kitchen, I said $2,000 to $10,000 because maybe if you're able to save the cabinets, the countertops, you paint things, you could save some money there, but we're going to spend probably around $6,000 or more on that one. Exterior paint, interior paint, flooring. A demo was something I forgot to talk about as well, right? It costs money to tear out that carpet, to move out the people's stuff. They did leave some stuff for us. And if you're tearing out doors, windows, cabinets, bathroom, all that costs money as well. So don't forget that demo cost. Something else, you might have dumpsters, right? We've had some dumpsters there. Dumpsters cost money as well. And we have some miscellaneous costs here at the end to kind of take care of a lot of stuff we missed too. Windows for that house, probably around $4,000 when you figure there's not a lot of windows, but there's that patio door. I think we're going to replace. We'll see. HVAC, I think the furnace is okay, but sorry. But there's probably some cleaning, maybe some repairs that need done. The vents probably need cleaned, and there might be more costs there than we know too, but that can be in our miscellaneous, hopefully. Plumbing, we can see some of those pipes need some work, some repairs, so we have costs there. The roof has already been done. It's around that $7,000 number, but it could have been way more if you need to do the decking, different things. So I'm giving you a range on this particular house. Doors, again, we might not do the doors. We might just paint them, but I put that in there just in case we do the doors. Electrical work, we want to replace those outlets, make sure the wiring's safe. I don't know where the panel was. We didn't check that out. It might need work. Trim, adding trim to those rooms that doesn't have it, $1,000. So I think that covers most of everything we did. I probably forgot something, but we have this miscellaneous $5,000 to handle some of the mold. There are a couple spots that need some drywall, maybe some other stuff we forgot and missed, and little stuff that always pops up. So total, we're almost at $50,000, $47,000 to rehab that house. A lot, and not that big of a house, but there's a lot of work there, a lot of different things going on. And this is why we love to buy properties that don't need that much, to just need cosmetic work, because you just don't even realize how much it adds up to and how much you're spending on all the little things, and everything's getting more expensive. So I feel like the last time I did this video, which may have been like 5 years ago, in that range, I can link to it below too, so you can watch it. It was a smaller house, but I think we spent about $30,000 doing about the same amount of work, and maybe 35, and costs have definitely increased a lot. And then finally, here's some other costs to think about. Oh, I forgot my little $sign, sorry. That you wouldn't have on this house, but you might have that I didn't mention. Garage doors can be $1,000 to $2,500. Garage door openers, a few $100. Landscaping, if we're going to go do landscaping on that house, you can spend $1,500, doing some mulch and some different things, or you can spend thousands and thousands of dollars putting in a sprinkler system, putting in a fence. All that can be very, very expensive. So landscaping can be very expensive. We tend to do very little landscaping, just spruce things up a little bit, because it can be so expensive and really doesn't offer that great of a return when we're selling the house, because a lot of people think, hey, I can do that landscaping myself, it's not a big deal. Foundation, we talked about that, could be very tiny or huge numbers. Basement finish, if you want to finish a basement, it's for about 1,000 square foot basement. I'd assume you're putting in a bath, a family room, doors, trim, lights, all that. You're probably spending $30,000 to $50,000 on a basement finish. That's a pretty basic basement finish now. Drywall, if we had to re-sheet rock this whole house, probably around $10,000. That's a pretty rough estimate, but that can get pretty expensive if you decide to just gut everything and replace it all. That's not a slight commitment you're agreeing to there. Adding, removing walls could be $1,000 for a very simple one to $10,000 for one that has electrical heating, needs support. That can really add up. Sewer, that could be $7,500 to $15,000 if you're replacing a sewer line. Maybe you're just doing some patchwork. Maybe it could be less, but this is if you have to replace a sewer line. Flood cleanup, we kind of talked about that, $2,000 to $20,000, depending on how severe that is. And of course, you have to repair all the damage too. In siding, you could spend $5,000 with cheap stuff, or $40,000 if you go with a really expensive company. So hopefully this gives you an idea of what it costs to fix up houses right now. Again, kind of doing things the way we do, really shopping around, really working hard to get good prices, and not just going with the first contractor we see or a door-to-door person who wants to fix up everything and charges way more than we can get from other people. All right, there you go. There's that beauty. That even more beautiful house there. And this actually pretty decent house. So thank you so much for watching. Love the comments, love the likes, love the shares, love seeing new subscribers. Have lots of videos on our flips, our different rental properties, our different projects. We have 12 flips going right now, almost 40 some rental properties that vary from 900 square feet to 68,000 square feet. So a lot going on, a liquor store, mini mart, some other businesses I'm working on starting as well. So happy to have you if you decide to stick around and watch some of our videos. We'll try and do many more of these educational videos too. Let us know if you like this type. If you have questions, leave them below. And yeah, we'll get to work on fixing up the rest of this property. If you are wondering what I paid for this, I paid $350,000 for this. If we were to get it fixed up, all rented, it would probably be worth in the $550,000 to $600,000 range conservatively, because we do have a basement unit there, the house, possibly renting this unit and renting this one. Technically this unit isn't really legal over here. We're not allowed to have it, but I've talked about that in my previous video on this property when I first bought it, and I'll link to that below if you want to see that and see what it looked like before we did all these repairs. All right, thank you so much for watching again. We'll be back soon with a lot more content.